Hello and welcome to a global Kingspan webinar. At Kingspan, we like to stay curious and ask ourselves, what if? What if our full spectrum of materials could include acoustic solutions? And what if those acoustic solutions could be made from woodwool and a low-carbon binder? Today's masterclass will look at low embodied carbon acoustic panels and cradle-to-cradle certification. We understand that you might have questions, and if you do, please email them over to the email address on the screen behind me. We will answer some questions after the presentation is finished. If we don't have time to answer all the questions, we'll get back to everybody after today's event. I'll now hand over to Tina, who will take you through the masterclass.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Lucy. My name is Tina Snøger Christensen. I'm from a Danish company called Troldtekt, a relatively new member of the Kingspan group. But Troldtekt is actually a very old company, founded in Denmark back in 1855, originally as a merchant importing building materials from all of Europe to Denmark. But since 1935, the company has also been a manufacturer of panels with a manufacturing site in the western part of Denmark in a small town called Troldtekt, hence the peculiar name Troldtekt, which was registered already back in 1936. We still have a production site there. We now also have a sales office representation in Germany since 2015, also in Sweden since 2016. We are approximately 200 employees. And since 1st of May 2022, we've now joined the Kingspan family. And we now also have sales reps in the UK and Ireland and also in Norway. What we do, our products are cement-bonded woodwool panels made from Danish cement and Danish-grown Norwegian spruce. We use only certified wood for our panels, FSC or PEFC certified wood, ensuring the biodiversity. I'll just show you some examples of our products applied. The first one you see is a private home in Denmark with the unpainted panels of the ceiling. The next one is a restaurant with white painted panels. The third, a school in Germany actually with green painted panels. And the last one, a swing bath also with black and green panels. These are all examples of our standard panels, 60 by 120, but we have also introduced a series of design solutions in 2019. Here I'll show you some examples. The first one is an office building north of Copenhagen where they in the canteen applied yellow painted Troldtekt romp design. The next one is a restaurant with a black painted Troldtekt line. A third one is Troldtekt curves applied in a wellness studio. And finally, you have a Troldtekt line design painted white applied in both ceiling and wall. What is very obvious when you see these pictures that our products are used for the interiors, and all materials used indoors affect the indoor climate. The core property of our panels are the acoustic properties. Acoustics being something you cannot see, but something that's actually very important for your well-being, for how you feel. Poor acoustics can influence your concentration, sleep, and can even cause stress. When we talk about acoustic, we talk about the reverberation time. Actually, it's the time from, for instance, when you clap your hands and until the sound dies out. That is what we call reverberation time. When you have hard, even surfaces, you have a very long reverberation time, making it difficult to understand. With open surface panels or materials like Troldtekt, you have a short reverberation time, making it very easy to understand what is being said in a room. I'll just show you just very briefly take you through some examples of what an acoustic material can do. The first example is a simple concrete ceiling with no acoustic solution. There you have a reverberation time of 4.69 seconds. It can actually, with a suspended acoustic ceiling, it can be reduced to 0.48 seconds, depending on which construction you choose. Acoustics is the main property of our product. And this has basically been what we have been communicating about. We only ever talked about the product properties. The company until around year 2000 was absolutely anonymous, which wasn't really relevant because we had all these properties that we were communicating about. We sell basically all our products to merchants in Denmark, and this was what was important. But then something changed. We had the internet. We certainly had access to totally different stakeholders, primarily architects, municipalities, and also we met totally different questions than what we were used to. Questions about environment, ethical questions, etc. So 2009, we decided to be transparent and for the first time communicate, publish our product life cycle description, describing which materials, which raw materials we use, the emissions from transport, production, etc. The use phase was very well documented because that was what we had been communicating about. For instance, we have had the Danish indoor label since 1997. That we actually use production waste as a soil improver was something we had never communicated about before 2009. We also decided to join the UN Global Compact 2010 and have been reporting yearly CSR report to the UN, to the UNO since then. But we needed a sort of third-party verification that our story was to be believed. And we started looking for different international schemes. We looked at the German Blauer Engel, we looked at the Scandinavian Swan certification, but we ended up choosing the cradle-to-cradle certification, which is based on a cradle-to-cradle design concept founded by German chemist Michael Braungart and American architect William McDonough. And the concept is based on these three principles. First of all, we don't have waste. We eliminate waste. Everything we produce, everything should be designed to go into either the biosphere or the technosphere. Of course, we use renewable energies. We support, celebrate diversity, including biodiversity. Those are the design principles. This has resulted also in a certification. The certification has 5 criteria. It has 5 levels as well. I have to note that the icons, the criteria I'm showing you here is based on the version 3.1. There's also a new version now, 4.0. I'll get back to that later in my presentation. But you have material health, you have reutilization, you have energy, you have water stewardship and social fairness. And what's also very essential for this certification, as one of the founders said, you don't have to be perfect to start, but you have to constantly improve. And that's the reason why this certification is built with different levels. I'll now walk you through how we at Troldtekt have been using this framework as for our innovation, for our improvements. I'll give you a deeper dive into material health, into reutilization, into energy, and walk relatively fast to the next two so that we keep within our timeline here. Material health, as one of the founders said, if you don't have healthy materials, you cannot have a healthy circular economy. It's the basic that we know that we have healthy materials. What is significant for, these are the principles. I will not go into details. It's just the principle of the certification. When you enter the certification, it's relatively easy. The further you get, the harder the demands get. It gets even tougher to go to the certification to advance to the next level. What's significant for cradle to cradle? Of course, you have a list of banned substances, but you also analyze each product down to 100 parts per million, meaning that we actually know what's in our product and not just what's not in our products. And when I say we, it's actually not we. It is our cradle-to-cradle assessor, because what's essential here is that this knowledge, as a manufacturer, you might have a technical data sheet from your suppliers, but the cradle-to-cradle assessment goes much deeper, and then it's necessary to have an NDA between our assessor and our suppliers. That's one of the essential things about the cradle-to-cradle certification. When we entered the certification, or started working with the certification in 2011, we thought this should be relatively easy. We have 3 ingredients. We have wood, we have cement, we have water. But we also wanted to include our standard colors, because we sell a lot of panels with paint, basically, or primarily white, gray, and black. These are our standard colors. And then it got complicated, because then you have really, really many substances to be analyzed. When we had been working with this for about a year, we chose to publish the certification only with our unpainted panels. for the following year, 2013, we could also include the painted panels, white, grey and black, at silver level. And then it took us until 2022 before we could advance to the gold level, the challenge being the paint, because we had to work with our supplier to get our supplier to improve their recipe. One of the challenges, which was actually a very good thing, was this highly modern automated painting facility that we installed in 2016. It sprays the paint onto the panels. The surplus paint is collected, mixed with new paint and reused. We actually managed to reduce our waste of paint by more than 70%. But it also meant that we had to work with the durability of the paint, because as soon as you open the paint, it gets oxygen, and then if we didn't have the biocide that was in the recipe, it would start rotting. So we really had to work really hard with our supplier in order for them to develop a new recipe, which we managed in 2022, and then we could advance to gold level for the entire series. And why is that so important? Why is material health so important? Well, when we talk about interiors, the materials that we apply affect the indoor climate. And one of the other aspects in indoor climate is the indoor air quality. We spend up to 90% of our times indoors in the Western world, which is really surprising when you hear that figure, but that's actually where we spend our time. And of course, it's indoors that we're exposed to chemicals and to dangerous substances. Depending on our size and activity, we inhale between 10 and 20 cubic meters of air each day, something that will approximately 12 to 24 kilos. If you look at children, it's even more severe, because alone due to their smaller size, they inhale even more because they have relatively greater lung capacity. Also, they are more closer to the ground where you actually have the dust. So they're really, really exposed to dust and chemicals. I have this folio lent to me by Atelier, Mo engineers. It just shows that the smaller the particles, the more severe they can affect us, more severely, the more dangerous it gets, and that's why it is so important to know that we don't have any toxic substances in our materials that we use for indoors. And how can we then design with healthy materials? There are quite a few very good certifications looking at degassing, particle emissions, and then you have the cradle to cradle that also looks at how will the substances affect the next life cycle, because we talk about recycling, reusing the materials. And then we get to material utilization, which in the new version is called circularity, which is for a Dane would be much more easy to pronounce. But it's simply about eliminating waste. This is the whole idea behind the cradle to cradle certification. Same principle, you can enter relatively easy, then it gets harder and harder and harder in this certification. And that's really what I find sympathetic about cradle to cradle, because it's not just a stamp, it's actually a driver to get more sustainability. You really have to improve on all 5 criteria to get your recertifications. I've also chosen to include this one, which is not really a part of the cradle to cradle certification. It's just to define what do I mean when I say circularity and recycling. I think the first one is really obvious. We're used to having products that we use, and we throw them away, then we have waste. The last one is also really obvious. It's a circular economy. We keep reusing or recycling our products. But what we have in the middle is very often communicated as circular economy. But when you talk about cradle to cradle, it is only circular when we don't end up having waste. It can be very good to recycle, but it doesn't really get circular until you have no waste. You can also have a product with a very long lifetime that is not recycled, but it might be more sustainable than products with a shorter lifetime that's being recycled if they end up as waste. Then it gets, I've brought a few examples. This is an old industrial facility from 1957, which was transformed into office spaces. They simply chose to keep the original Troldtekt panels. They didn't even paint them, they're just there. It's not recycling, it's simply just longevity. And another example from our airport just outside of Aarhus. I happened to come by when they were painting these 40-plus-year-old panels. Looks brilliant, but it's actually only at the end of the life of the building that we know, do these panels end up as waste or are they being recycled? Which makes this whole discussion about circularity with a product like ours a bit complicated, because we have this long lifetime also to look into. As I said initially, our production waste is being composted, brought back to the biological circle, but in later years we have been focusing much more on the technological circle, because we will not be able to scale the biological because of this long lifetime. We do not have any documentation of how the panels have been treated during the use phase, have they been painted or whatever. We have a system running now, has been for years, for 3 or 4 years now, with our supplier, Aalborg Portland. The waste we have from the molding facility is so small that it can actually be blown into the trucks that else would be driving empty back to Aalborg Portland, and then this waste is blown into the production of cement. The wooden part replaces other fossil fuels, and the cement part is simply just being part of raw material for new cement. This we're trying to scale. There have been some challenges, practical challenges, how to get the waste into the system, but that's something we're working on. This has been our focus for the first years of our cradle to cradle journey, because our focus has been on how to eliminate waste, how to make sure that our products are being utilized in a better way than just being incinerated. But we're actually now looking into this waste hierarchy. We're now preparing a catalog of how to best utilize waste or end-of-life panels in these different stages, because we don't believe that we will have the same end-of-life solution in the southern part of Germany as we will in Norway. We have to find local partnerships to best utilize the products, because we don't believe the one solution would be to transport everything back to Denmark, because then you have, it just simply doesn't make sense to transport waste to Europe. We have to find, circularity has to be local. We simply have to find local partners. It's a lot of work, but I think it's a very interesting way to go, and it is important work to do. The next part is the next criteria in cradle to cradle is renewable energy. At Troldtekt we switched, same principle as by all the other criteria. It's relatively easy to enter, then it gets tougher and tougher. At Troldtekt we entered 2013, we switched to renewable energy, wind energy, and today we are at 97.7% renewable energy, which absolutely doesn't mean that we don't have any carbon emission, because we have that from Scope 3, we have that from our raw materials, we have that from the cement, but there are very good reasons for us to use cement as a binder for a biogenic material as woodwool, because it's the cement that gives us the fire performance. BS1DO and A2S1DO is what we achieve only with the cement. We don't have any fire retardants. It's simply the cement giving this product these properties. Then we have the longevity, we have the water resistance. It's very difficult to find a binder, an alternative binder with the same properties, but Aalborg Portland introduced a few years ago a new binder. It's still cement, but instead of limestone we use calcinated clay, and thereby reducing this carbon footprint by some 30%. We have already received a lot of awards on this account. If you compare to our standard panels based on grey cement, we have a reduction of 26% throughout the entire life cycle. And if you compare with our panels based on white cement, you're actually by 38% lower carbon emission. It's a huge step, but it's only the first step. We're also working on a project along with the Danish Institute of Fire and Security Technologies and other partners as well. A very, very interesting project using construction waste to create a new binder that can be an alternative to cement. The samples that you see are actually based on this binder. It's called geopolymer. But I have to say it's a project. It's not yet a product. It still needs a lot of work before we get there. But I believe in the next 4 or 5 years we will see a very, very, very interesting development in this direction. We also have very interesting projects running here at ICON, but they are not yet published, but there are very interesting projects at the moment. Water stewardship, just very quickly run through that. It's about not emission, not simply having cleaner water coming from our production. Same principles as all the other criteria. It's relatively easy to enter, then it gets tougher. Then finally, we have the social fairness, which when we chose this certification, we found it very sympathetic that we don't just focus on the product, but also on how we produce our products, how we engage with the local community, with our employees. We found it a very sympathetic and very important part also of a product certification. Same principle, it gets tougher now with the 4.0 version that is now coming. It's also aligning with the European CSRD directive. It gets actually one of the criteria that is getting quite harder than the 4.0. As I said initially, we have been submitting our CSR reports to the UN since 2010, and also 3 times managed to get on the list of the best Danish CSR reports in the SME segment, but we grew out of that segment now in 21. But we're now aligning our CSR reporting with the new CSRD directive and with the new version of Cradle to Cradle. We've now been working with Cradle to Cradle for more than a decade, and as you see here, you see our scorecard. That's also very essential for the certification. We have 5 criteria. You cannot advance to the next level before you have improved on all 5 criteria. So it was the paint and our work with our paint suppliers that was keeping us from advancing from silver to gold, which we achieved in 2022. When we had been working with this certification for about a year, it was very, very obvious for us that we can only be serious with a certification like this if we approach it strategically. So we published a roadmap that we have been updating once a year. It ran from 2012 to 2022. You see a lot of tick boxes, which things that we have already achieved. It has some long-term goals, short-term goals. We're now working on our next very ambitious roadmap, which is to be aligned with the next version of the certification, the 4.0, the CSRD directive, and of course is to support the Planet Passionate scheme. This was the end of my presentation. I hope you have some questions for me.
Thanks, Tina. We do have some questions that have come through from the audience. Why did you choose Cradle to Cradle over all of the different certifications and labels in the building industry?
It was actually quite a difficult decision, but we chose the Cradle to Cradle because it gives us a holistic approach to sustainability. There's so much focus at the moment on carbon emission, on CO2, but sustainability is much more than just CO2. So that was really one of the main reasons. Also, as I mentioned, the social responsibility was an important factor for us. And it has given us a framework that we can base our development, our innovations on.
Okay, thank you. Another one's just come through. You talk about material health as an important aspect of sustainability.
Yes.
Is there a potential clash between reducing CO2 and improving material health in buildings?
There is, when we switch from virgin raw materials that are fully defined to secondary raw material circularity, where we use raw materials that have had a former lifetime and they're undefined. That's where we have the challenges. But I think there should be solutions. We have to switch with time to secondary raw materials, but it gives some challenges.
Okay. And the last question we have in today is In your opinion, what are the biggest threats to the sustainability agenda that seems to dominate the building industry right now?
Well, overall right now it's the energy crisis that has put a stop to many good initiatives. One of the challenges is also just to focus on one thing, focus on economy, not focus on short term instead of focusing on long term. That's really what we see as a challenge at the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Tina, and thank you to everybody at home for watching. If you have any questions, please do email into the Icon email address and we'd be happy to take that away after today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy.